Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strick and Roll. I'm your host, Shwin. In this episode 55, I'm joined by first-time guest of the pod. Her name is SJ. You can follow her on Twitter at SJ Hoops. SJ Basketball 8. Sorry, there you go. SJ Hoops is not the at SJ Basketball 8. SJ, how are you doing? Nice to have you on for the first time.
Yeah, it's nice to be on. Thank you again. I'm doing all right. Yeah, just a long week as usual for me. So yeah, I'm at the end of the week, so I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm good. End of the week, and there's no NBA basketball for a week, which I'm looking forward to
Yes.
not having in my life. So we're gonna enjoy that. We're gonna talk about the Mavericks, team that is near and dear to SJ's heart. But before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. The first thing that Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strickland on Instagram. We are posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are, if you haven't done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.strick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store, and you can find all kinds of cool stuff on there. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. And finally, the Strickland has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our newest podcast that is hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you also get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There for the tiers, there's a $9 tier that gets you access to this pod right here, Strick and Roll, my solo pod, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, our newest podcast that you guessed it, is about the NFL that is hosted by Constantine Metricos and Jeffrey Rasmussen. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening to pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your basketball wagering needs, including pro and college hoops throughout the year. With up-to-the-minute odds, stats, and trends, you can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in-game live betting, contests, and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime for your desktop or your mobile devices. Head to BetOnline today to become part of the team, and remember to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, SJ. So I wanted to have you on because the Mavericks are a team. Well, the Knicks fans have a tangential interest in the Mavericks still, since you guys still owe us a first-round pick. We were looking forward to it last year. Unfortunately, you guys successfully tanked your way into a top 10 pick and parlayed that into Derek Lively and Olivia Maxence Prosper. But I want to. I've been guilty of this. I think everybody's guilty of this on NBA Twitter anyway. You latch on to a stupid thing a team does, and then that becomes the narrative of that team for however long. And the Mavericks have done several stupid things. And we will get into what they did at the deadline. I'll just say very broadly, my initial reaction to what they did at the deadline was, oh my God, like, why are they throwing more chips into the pot? Like, this is crazy. I don't know if these guys move the needle, blah, blah, blah. But I saw things that you were tweeting and other Mavericks people were tweeting, and then I watched a couple of the games, and I'm not of the opinion that, like, yeah, look, they destroyed OKC the first game after the trade. I'm not sure that immediately makes them a title contender. Actually, I think that says something about the idea that OKC maybe not a title contender. But watching that and just kind of seeing the reaction from Mavericks fans, I was like, okay, like maybe it's time to like let go of the dumb things they've done in the past and move on, and now assess these moves that they're making now separate of those. Like, they are detached. But I do want to go back, because I think to kind of evaluate what they are doing now, you have to go back to how we even got here. And more critical than anything to getting here is a very, very good and awesome thing they did, which is trading the 5th overall pick plus a top 10 protected future pick for the 3rd pick in the draft, which became Luka Doncic. I think that was probably Donnie Nelson's last good move for the Mavericks, and it was a hell of a move. So just going back to that, when that trade happened, was your initial reaction like, because my initial reaction was, what? Like wait, like Luka probably should have gone 1. He drops to 3. I don't get this. I don't know. What was your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction to that, first of all, I mean, you said that's one of the best things that Donnie Nelson has ever done. Well, I would argue he kind of botched that as well.
Okay, okay. Why is that?
Um, in the sense that yes, you got Luca. So, I mean, overall, objectively, that's a win. But the
There's another
fact
win in that
that
draft too.
yeah, true. But the we'll get to that, I guess. um, but the fact that you get there and you get him, but there were other deals on the table from Atlanta. They could have taken Bazemore to save themselves that first round pick from 2019.
Mm.
And I have been of the opinion that one of the mistakes that they have made is not valuing draft picks, especially at that time, because as we've seen, as the our cat book just explodes, just like that instantly, you need those, cheap contracts and guys that can grow with your young star that you're trying to get to build your, future around. So I think, yay for getting us Luca. Like, my reaction to that, I mean, I thought I mean, the reporting, I thought there was a chance just because, at the time, it was he was an obvious number 1, but the reporting around Phoenix was just weird. Like, it was like Aiton was the guy that they were gonna take, all these ties, but then they, hired Luca's former
Yeah.
coach, so then that was like a curveball where you're like, maybe they're gonna smarten up and, like, just take the best player there. Um but they didn't, and I never thought the Kings would have taken him. So I thought, okay, I just thought we were gonna be in there somehow, some way. But my thing is, with that being said, you still have to get the little wins. And I think giving up that pick, um, granted, it turned into Cam Reddish, and I mean, I know you guys have thoughts on him as well.
He is a
But
basketball player in the
yeah,
NBA.
he's a basketball player, yeah, so it's not
So
like I'm
far, so
saying,
far.
yeah, so I'm not saying that we lost a ton because that he was the pick then, but who knows, maybe we wouldn't have picked him. Maybe we would have, who knows? And maybe he would have turned out different, if we started in Dallas. Who knows? Like, that's just a whole world of hypotheticals. My point is that I would have liked to have that pick, had that pick at the time. So I just think even there, that's where you already start one step behind in a certain aspect, even though you get a win later on, and even that you fumble
Well,
eventually.
we'll get to that, but yeah, no, absolutely. You talked about it. There's like trickle down effects of every decision you make, obviously, and I mean, just in terms of if you had kept the pick, which they probably wouldn't have because of a trade they made very soon after. But if they had kept the pick, to your point, Cam Johnson 11, PJ Washington, who the Mavericks just traded for 12, Hero 13. Look, I don't love any of those players necessarily, but I mean, Cam Johnson, especially next to a guy like Luka, it's a pretty sweet fit. And again, who knows if the Mavericks would have taken him? Obviously, when the Suns even picked Cam Johnson, people ridiculed them for that because they felt he was a
Yeah.
reach. But like, he's earned that draft slot. And yeah, like again, so you never know how these things can turn out. So anyway, so they draft Luca. They also draft one Jalen Brunson in that draft in the second round. So kind of like honestly, it's insane looking back at that draft. Where like the second round, like the end of that first round into the second round has yielded like some really interesting players. So Nick Claxton goes 31. Uh, or no, sorry, this is the year before, or the year after. Sorry, I'm looking at it. But that 2018 draft, there was like a lot of guys that went late, if I remember correctly, that ended up being pretty decent. Um, Shamit's had a career, but Simon's 24, Mo Wagner 25. But then you get into this like second round, and then it's Javon Carter 32, Jalen Brunson 33, Mitchell Robinson 36. So like they were some real players. Bruce Brown goes 42 in that draft. Melton 46. So they were like real guys that have kind of stuck around the league and more than that, obviously in some cases. Um, but I guess like to stick with the 2018 draft for a second here, when they took Brunson, to me, I remember immediately thinking in my head, I was like, okay, you take Luca no matter what. That's its own thing. Once they took Jalen Brunson, in your head, were you like, yeah, they're done with Dennis Smith Jr.?
Yeah. I mean, after that, it was like, or at the very least, they were hedging.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So I just felt okay. And I mean, I like Brunson. Granted, his pedigree coming out of college. Like you can say what you want about how you thought it would translate in the NBA, but he had a reputation. So it's not like he was a complete no name. Coming to the league. Like he was always going to. I feel like find his way, So I just felt Dennis Smith Jr., especially with Luka coming in, he was just gonna be the odd man out. But I was willing to see it, at least before I kind of strike it, out. So I was happy that I at least saw what it could be and realized that it was never gonna work. At the very least at the time. Um Maybe in the future reunion, when guys are more mature, but I don't think in that moment they would have been, or it would have worked the way they wanted to, and they figured that out as well.
Do you put any of like look, Dennis Smith's obviously I don't know what the hell happened to his jump shot between it's one of these guys, right? The jump shot just who knows what happens there. But do you put any of the blame on how like his tenure kind of worked out in Dallas um on Carlisle, or do you just think like it didn't really matter who the coach was? Dennis Smith was just he needed to like
Not
take these lumps, and look, he's turned himself into a pretty nice defensive player, and he's carved out a little role for himself. But obviously, not what you hope for with that high of a pick. You think that's not on Carlisle? It's just a Dennis Smith thing.
I think here's the thing. I don't want to play the blame game in the way like I'm saying like, yeah, Dennis should, it's his fault or it's his skill set at the time. I just think Rick could have been a bit more like they weren't a match, like a player coach match at the time. And by all reports, granted, I was in the locker room, but some of the reports were that Rick kind of purposely kind of pit Luca against Dennis in a way, but it wasn't like that on the player level because Dennis and Luca were very close. So it was just like I said, I don't want to make it seem like I'm completely validating those reports, but at the same time, it does sound like Rick to a degree. So I just think they just weren't a player coach match at the time, and I think if Rick at the time as well was starting to kind of grow out of Dallas and out of that roster. By the time he left, I know the basketball world was shocked, but Mavs fans, at least the ones that were being realistic about the team, they knew that Rick was kind of going to be on his way out. Or it wasn't as shocking when he
Mm-hmm.
left. So yeah.
Um, all right, so whatever. 2018, that draft is kind of like a home run for the Mavericks anyway. They get Luca, they take Brunson in the second round. So that season goes on. Did you like they look? We can just get to this at this point. So I think it's January 31st. I'm almost positive that was the day. They trade for Kristaps Porzingis from the Knicks. Did you have a feeling they were like trying to make an aggressive move in season? Because I mean, I knew like obviously that we knew there was reporting throughout that time in New York that the Mavericks, among other teams, had been interested in Kristaps. There had also been reporting that Kristaps wanted a max contract, a guaranteed max contract, and the Knicks were like trying to not do that, which is to me was the right play, and I think it has proven out to be that way. Um, was there anything from like you had heard on the Dallas side of things of like forget just Kristaps specifically, but was there already an inkling of like holy shit, Luka's really good, like we need to just try and capitalize on this window now and his rookie contract is cheap, or did that kind of come out of nowhere as well for you?
I mean, it was out of nowhere, just just putting that out there because one, we never get players, especially at that time, like, and the trades we had made were like bad, like kind of around that time, like before then it was um the Rondo trade that flopped. And even in free agency, I mean that year we got DeAndre Jordan, or the year before, sorry, we got DeAndre Jordan, but before that he spurned us. So like the fact that we got Chris Stapps was kind of ridiculous to believe at the time. But at the same time, I knew our names were in the talks. I mean, that was just the reporting. Um, but I didn't think that they would like pull it off. And I mean, them at the time, I was, excited about it because when I loved Kristaps. Like, I don't know if people know, or at the time, like I mean, over time, I kind of, my opinion, obviously roller coaster.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
As he was on my team, but like before that, I was a huge Kristaps fan because I mean, I don't know if people know, but I live in New York, so I went to Knicks games. He was there. Like I was a huge Kristaps fan. So the fact that we got him, I was like, okay. And you saw the vision, okay, guard big, just as baseline, and you're thinking, okay, yes, he had injury hit. That was always the thing that you think about with him. Like, okay, he has injury stuff, but at the same time, yes, he's 7'3", so that's always a risk. But the fact that it was like an ACL injury, and you've heard of that before, and guys come back, and I know it's different for some other those guys that are a bit taller, but it wasn't a scary injury. At least that was the thinking. So I'm like, okay, it'll take him a little bit, but he'll come back and pair with our, young guy. So at the time, it seemed great, but as time went on, and obviously in hindsight, you can say, yeah, that was definitely the wrong move. At the time. And I think a lot of it stems with not even so much so of the outside stuff, like not getting along and things like that, or even role, but the fact that injuries was like a huge factor in why it didn't, like, work. But that's, getting ahead.